Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. by recognizing the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga-Anishinaabeg territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. This week, we are flying the flag of the Mississauga Nation at the Municipal Centre to honor June as Indigenous History Month and tomorrow as National Indigenous Peoples Day. The Municipality of Brighton continues to stand in solidarity with the people of the Ukraine. As part of that solidarity and as a welcoming and inclusive community, I highlight our unwavering support for the Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, and for democratically elected sovereign governments around the world. Brighton, our council, and our citizens are deeply concerned about the humanitarian toll the invasion will take on the Ukraine and its citizens. And we'll begin with a motion from Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that the council June 20th, 2022 council agenda be amended to add a notice of motion from Councillor LeBlanc and Councillor Bateman regarding Draven alert system, and further that the notice of motion be considered at the June 20th council meeting as a motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And with that, a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council approve the June 20th, 2022 council agenda as amended. Councillor Bateman.
Mayor, through you, I'd like to introduce a motion that we waive the procedural bylaw, that we can deal with that notice of motion as a motion tonight.
That was part of the motion we just passed.
Okay,
Yeah,
you
so
had
we're
that
good.
in there?
We don't
Okay.
need to waive the
Okay,
bylaw.
thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Any discussion on the motion to accept the amended agenda? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? And if so, please state the general nature thereof. And there are none noted. Any announcements this evening? Councillor Bateman?
Just two, and they both pertain to the vaccination clinics. June 22nd, out in Codrington at the North Fire Hall. It's running from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. GoVax bus will be out there. And on June 25th at ENSS, it's walk-in and appointments, and that will be the last clinic for the foreseeable future held by the health unit. And hopefully they don't have to fire them back up, as we said before. And that's going to run from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Thank you for that. Councillor LeBlanc?
I'd like to make an announcement for Hugs for a Ukrainian family, which is going to be running at Special Effects on the 25th from 12 p.m. till 4 p.m.
Thank you. And that's helping Ukrainians get settled. Hugs is what
That's
that
right.
stands for.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's the 25th of June, it's Saturday, from noon till 2? Noon till 2? Noon till 4. Thank you for that. Councillor Tedman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to let everybody know, and please spread the news, that there was a question at the Codrington Market with the Quinte. It's now changed from the Quinte Access to Quinte Transit bus be doing the route and going out there. And it does stop at other different places along the route. And it definitely will be starting the 1st of June, and it will run through at 1st of July, all August and September. And thanks to Mr. and Mrs. LeBlanc for their donation that's going to help that.
Nice.
So hopefully you will encourage people and tell people that that service is available.
And I'm sure, Mr. Hagerman, we can get that on our social feeds and maybe even on the website, or a link through our website to Quinte Transit. Go ahead.
And I forgot to mention, and also if those people, whoever wants to ride it, so chooses, they can stay for a while and enjoy the entertainment. And that goes on from 11 till 1. So, it's nice that they can sit at the picnic tables, they can do a bit of shopping and listen to, and it's a nice way to spend part of your day.
And the market itself is getting bigger and bigger, I noticed when I
Yes.
was out there. It's great. Good success story. Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing how this is possibly our last meeting in June, just want to remind people that Canada Day celebrations will be going on at King Edward Park, and I believe at Proctor House as well. So hope to see you all out to celebrate our great country's birthday.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
I also, at Codrington, the Strawberry Social for Father's Day went off very well. And there was great donations from Sobeys, the Cheer Farm, that helped it all go forward. And the Women's Auxiliary that donated their time for cutting the strawberries and serving. It went very well. So 60 to 75 dads went there and ate for free, had their thing. The excess cream and whipped cream that was done still had a good date. And it's working relationship is going to be going to Proctor House, and we're going to be using there. They're taking 2 cases of it to be using there. Also on the 28th of August is the dance in Codrington. It's 40 years since the place has been built, and that's going to be taking place. So I'll announce it again in July so that people are aware of it.
I think I saw that it was the 20th of August
20th, yeah,
on
sorry.
Facebook
20th.
today. Yeah.
I have something else on the 28th.
Maybe that's none of our business, what you're doing on the 20th. Councillor Anderson?
Well, since we're talking about all this food, I had the pleasure of attending the Trenton Memorial Hospital Phil Pinellas barbecue, the late Phil Pinellas. And it was for the volunteers of Trenton Memorial Hospital and Foundation. There was hundreds of people there. I gave greetings from the mayor, and anyhow, we're very fortunate. We've got a lot of good people, and things are very healthy at the Trenton Memorial Hospital.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I had the pleasure of attending the Army Cadets year-end review over at the high school students parking lot on Saturday. And it's just nice to see the kids out doing what they're supposed to be doing, not having to do Army Cadet training on Zoom. So as you can imagine, their numbers are down a little bit, but the intent is to do a bit of a recruitment drive in the fall when school comes back up to see if they can get their numbers back up. So if you know anyone who's of the Army Cadet age who might be interested, just let them know. They are on Facebook, at least on Facebook. I'm not sure where else. Anyone else? We'll move to the adoption of the minutes, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council adopt the June 6, 2022 council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council adopt the June 13th, 2022 planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us into the public meeting for the renaming of the park on Daniels Drive to the Queen Elizabeth II Park. This is our second opportunity for public input. We have received another piece of correspondence that the clerk's office did circulate to members of council. But I will open the floor to members of the public who may wish to speak with regard to the renaming of that park to the Queen Elizabeth II Park. Anyone from the gallery? Are we aware of anyone joining us on Zoom for that purpose? So I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council received comments from the June 20th, 2022 public meeting regarding the naming of the park on Daniels Drive in recognition of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee as Queen Elizabeth II Park. Is there any discussion? I will let everyone know that because of some of the comments we have received, I have reached out to Chief Mowat at Alderville First Nation to consult with him on the naming of the park in the name of Her Majesty, and making sure that we're doing things sensitively and through the truth and reconciliation process. I haven't heard back from him yet, but we will have lots of time to have those consultations. So anything further? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to a presentation this evening from Community Care Northumberland, an update regarding Seniors Month. And who's joining us here? Leianne Peart. Leianne, I'll turn the floor over to you and you can begin your presentation as you wish.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So I'm okay to go ahead and share my screen.
Please do.
Can everybody see that?
We can here in Chambers.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for having me here to talk about the various services that we offer in the area, but also to say thank you to the municipality for supporting us over all these years that we've been here. So Community Care Northumberland, as you can see, we've been around for about 34 areas in 34 years in Northumberland County, and we support seniors, adults with disabilities, caregivers, hospice clients and their caregivers, and people recovering from various health issues. Through our mission, vision, and values, which we've just redone this year, we acknowledge our process, ambitions, ethics, and hope for supporting those that need it in this area. In the past few years, CCN has seen expansive growth in both the need for client services as well as an increased need for staff to provide those services. We now have over 70 full-time and part-time staff. We have over 576 volunteers who donated over about 41,000 service hours throughout our organization to help assist about 5,000 clients. Although many people believe that CCN is fully funded, the truth is CCN has a total operating budget of $4.43 million, excuse me, with 51% coming from ministry funding, 15% from program revenue, 23% from fundraising and donations, and about 10% from grants. As you can see, our support has been long-reaching in our county, and we have provided over 37,000 Meals on Wheels, 470 home help and maintenance clients supported. Because of COVID, we had switched at the time to virtual exercise class to keep people healthy at home. So we had 222 participants in that. We've had 431 community hospice clients that we supported. Over 26,000 essential drives. Our transportation program has exploded recently. Over 17,000 social and safety visits. A lot of that was virtual over the last year and a half, 2 years. 231 home at last clients supported, and 109 plus residents and their families supported at Ed's house. Through our nutrition department, we offer 2 separate programs. So one is our popular Meals on Wheels program. We have both hot and frozen program, which are both delivered to our clients' doors. And then we also have a community diners program, which offers the benefit of socialization with their meal. Unfortunately, the diners program with COVID had slowed down, but we just had our first one, or not slowed down, it had stopped, but we just had our first one in Hastings. So now we're going to expand throughout the county again, but we had 26 people participate and they were thrilled to be back face to face and to socialize. And then we also have our in-home support program, which offers the home help program, which is light housekeeping, light meal prep, that sort of thing. The Home First and Home at Last programs, which have to do with getting people home from the hospital safely and get them ready to do that. And our home maintenance program, which is to help people that have a challenge to complete outdoor projects and some indoor projects. So they're both very popular program, or all of them are pretty popular programs. And then, as I said, we have a very active transportation program that's growing. We have volunteer drivers, people that use their own vehicles. They get reimbursed for gas and expenses, but they take people to medical appointments, social appointments, or visits. We have a rural route transportation that runs like a regular bus. So we have bus stops all throughout the county where people can just get on and go to where they have to go throughout the county, which is awesome for our rural clients that don't have access to vehicles, and they can get to maybe a bigger center like Coburg or Brighton or wherever. And then we have a specialized transportation program that offers accessible transportation to people. One thing that's not on there with our transportation is that we've just started a stretcher service, which is a much needed program. We're starting small, so we've started with Ed's House, our residential hospice service, so getting people to that. And we're about to expand. We're in talks with Bridge Hospice. We're looking at, for long-term care homes, getting people to appointments that they need to go. We're starting slowly because, as you can imagine, it's a much in demand service, and we know it's going to be because it's very expensive for people to get anywhere that way. And then we have our wellness services, which we have exercise and falls prevention classes, which now we have in person and virtual. We have telephone reassurance calls. So we have volunteers call people at a regular time each day just to check on them. We have classes and workshops, which we've recently just started back up again, and they seem to be quite popular too. Friendly visiting programs. So we have volunteers go in once in a while to just sit with somebody who maybe isn't able to get out of their home very often and they've become isolated. So they may go in and just have a cup of tea with them, or they may play cards, or just have a chat. We have social groups such as a men's group and a women's group that have started back up again. And again, very popular, very hard to keep the distance between people because they've been away from people for so long. And then we have personal distress alarms where we loan out, it's like the lifeline thing. So if somebody's at home and has a medical emergency, they just push a button and we can get somebody there to them. So our newest, our almost newest project that we've done is Ed's House, Northumberland Hospice Care Center. So it is currently it's 6 residential suites that we have for people. We have 4 suites that are roughed in, and depending on funding, we will get those going as well. It's 24/7 care and support for residents, families, and loved ones. We charge nothing for them to come. And then we also, in that same building in the downstairs part, we have a community outreach team. So again, no cost to families. So it's anybody who's received a life-threatening diagnosis. It doesn't have to be a life-ending one, where we offer clinical navigation, visiting hospice services, supportive care counseling, and grief and bereavement counseling. And as far as referrals go, we take any kind of referral. Many of the ones that we get are self-referred, or they're from a family member or caregiver that's become concerned about someone. We get referrals through doctors and through primary care. But for Ed's House, it's a referral from a healthcare provider is required because there is some admission criteria for that. And for eligibility, there really is none. Anyone can access our services if they feel that they need it. We've had 30-year-olds that live on their own and have had surgery and just need us to come bring some meals for a temporary amount of time. And for fees, for some of our programs, we do have fees. We keep them extremely low so people that can afford them. So for home health, Meals on Wheels, transportation, diners, and some of the wellness classes, there's small fees attached to them. So this last slide is just to recognize how much that we appreciate Brighton Council supporting everything that we do. You really have been very supportive, and we want you to know how much we appreciate that. Each year we get the grant and aid that comes to us. This year again, we got $5,000, and it helps us so much with our organization and to be able to keep providing the quality service that we do. Every year we have and participate in the March for Meals campaign. And we've had the mayor come and help us for many years. I've been here 16 years, and I believe every year we've had the mayor coming out to that. So we appreciate it. And we just want to recognize the council for being so approachable and willing to work with us and with all not-for-profits. So that's the end of my presentation. Again, thank you so much for all of your support. It's so much appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Peart. We appreciate the presentation and bringing us up to speed on what Community Care Northumberland is doing across the county and in particular here in Brighton. I'll open the floor to members of council for questions of clarification. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. My comments are kind of focused around Ed's house. That community care obviously is quite involved with that. Are you involved with the other hospices in the county as well, or is this just solely a community care project?
Yeah, so Ed's house is our only residential hospice, but we have a close working relationship with the people at Bridge Hospice as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Just to say how much I personally, and I know I speak for an awful lot of people in the whole area here, how much we appreciate all that community care does. I had the privilege of actually doing Meals on Wheels with your grandmother and others, and sometimes that's the only contact some people have all week. And I was just reminded today by two separate people. The one was telling me about how her mom had really gone downhill with COVID because she didn't have any interaction once, and she would forget things, forget what day and everything. She said, but once people started to make more contact with her, she became back to who she was. And the other couple had to be pretty well housebound because of COVID, because of health issues. And they spoke so highly on Sunday of what a wonderful day they had just to be able to mingle. And we are social people, and all the things that you do at community care, I know I speak for most people anyways that are aware of that you do tremendous work.
Well, thank you so much for that. You're right, with COVID especially, I mean, we've always known our worth. But with COVID especially, we really saw it because we were able to connect with some people that weren't even able to get food into their home. We would pick up groceries, we would pick up medication, we did everything that we could. And then, like you said, socialization is so important, and it gave us that opportunity at least to give them some interaction daily.
Thank you both. Councillor LeBlanc.
I just want to say thank you for all your staff and all the volunteers that do this in our community. It's well thought of and done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And what some people probably don't know, Leianne, is that we started supporting community care from the very beginning when community care came to Brighton by offering free housing, if you will, for the organization out of what was then the old library, what we know as the shoe store today. And when the municipality chose to sell that building and community care moved over to Prince Edward Square now, instead of offering free rent, because it wasn't our space, we offered a rent subsidy, which is what you know as the grant and aid today. So we're glad to help out with that. We're happy to have an office here in Brighton for the purpose of offering, the services that you provide to our primarily seniors, but to our residents. So we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
And just further to that, Mayor, I remember the community care people were so worried that they were going to move from downtown, but it worked out that it was better where they were because it was so accessible for everybody going in and out. And I don't even know how you would figure out how many people give and how many hours they give in this community alone for volunteer. And it's just amazing. We would not function near as well as we do without the volunteers.
No, Brighton would be a very different place without the volunteers in this community. So thank you again, Leianne. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the presentation from Community Care Northumberland. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you, Leianne. We appreciate it. You're welcome to stick around, but there's certainly no obligation to do so. That brings us to citizens' comment. Madam Clerk, are you aware of any citizens' comment this evening? That brings us to staff reports. Oops. First report is with regard to the Integrated Accessibility Standards Policy. It's drafted by the Deputy Clerk, who is not with us. So Madam Clerk, do you have anything to add or highlight? Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receive the staff report, Integrated Accessibility Standards Policy, and further that council adopt the attached Integrated Accessibility Standards Policy. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
No comments on that, but just through the clerk, if you could pass it on to Marina, and I think I speak for Councillor Tadman as well. I think we all thought when Mr. Street left, it would be big shoes to fill, especially on the accessibility committee, and they were. And she is very knowledgeable on the accessibility, so it's been a seamless transition. So.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bateman. Anything further? Councillor LeBlanc.
It was a very good document to read. And very, very straightforward, easy to comprehend. But thank you for that.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Tadman.
We went through it with the accessibility committee before it was brought here, but I just wanted to say that I really am happy to know that when a staff person starts this municipality within the first 60 days, they get trained on all the things that are important to do with accessibility. And, and I think that whole document shows that we are willing to accommodate someone that comes with any kind of a disability, even, whether it's ramps or special desks for people that need to get into a desk with a wheelchair, anything, people with eyesight problems, all that kind of stuff. So I'm pleased that the document covered all that.
And in some cases, I know the clerk's office has gone to them if needed. Has gone to their home or apartment to take our service to them if that's needed. So.
Yes, and of course that happens during voting too.
Right. Yeah, 100%. Do you have a comment? Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is with regard to the Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility Ownership, Design, and Maintenance Responsibilities. Mr. Gooding, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I do not.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receive the staff report regarding Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility Ownership, Design, and Maintenance Responsibilities, and that staff work in conjunction with the developer of the Orchard Gate subdivision and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, and Parks to update the certificate of approval for the Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility to reflect the recommended improvements from JD Jewell Engineering peer review, and further the developer complete maintenance and design improvement works prior to the municipality assuming the stormwater facility. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
For me, my first question would be, and I'm not sure if it's to Mr. Gooding or perhaps the CAO. It was over a year ago. I think it was in February 2021. And during a meeting, we had asked about the ownership and we were going to be emailed within a week or whatever it was. And that's what led to this. And it's been a long process to determine ownership. I can only assume that it's taken this long because the developer perhaps contested the ownership. So my question would be, now that we've determined that they're still the owners of this, what was the cost of determining this? And are we going to be able to, as a municipality, recoup any of that cost of proving the ownership?
I'm going to turn that one over to the CAO. Mr. Castleman?
Certainly. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the cost is fairly nominal. Obviously, we had to get a legal opinion associated with the whole ownership issue. We often get legal opinions on a number of different issues in the normal course. Of course, we had staff time associated with completing the research. So I would say that the cost internally has been fairly nominal.
So is that your way of saying we will not be billing that back to the developer?
We had not anticipated doing that.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you, Mayor. When I read this report, I got very confused. And when they went, just bear with me because it's a very confusing report. You have three other engineering reports that say that the pond does not meet a 25-year event. This council, before I got on council, paid $270,000 or over $200,000 to have another engineer look at it. They stated that it didn't meet a 25-year event. The municipality hired Jules Engineering to do a study to see if it met a 25-year event. He came back and they said, no, it might meet a 50 if you use the 1 meter freeboard, possibly meet a 50. The entire design was for a 1 in 100-year event. No time did it achieve that. When you look at the design that was done in 2004, 2006, it was built, it was designed for 1 in 100-year rain event. All the pipes and the storm sewers were all sized for that. And it still doesn't meet a 25-year rain event. By raising the weir 0.4 of a meter is going to change the whole design of the sanitary or the storm sewer that was designed to allow the water to flow into the pond. In Jules' report, he says it's meant for flooding and to prevent flooding. A stormwater management pond is not meant for flooding. There's a difference between a stormwater management pond and a rain event. So when I looked at the design, because when you produced the report, you produced all the designs. The sanitary sewer, the storm sewer that flows to the pond is too small. If you look at the drawings of what it was built for in phase 1 and the substantial phase that were added to it, and the pond was never increased and a new ECA was never put in. So by taking Jules' recommendation and going for a new ECA, there's nothing in that Jules report that basically brings it to a 100-year event. It keeps it at a 25. You're changing the whole inlet and outlet and the purpose of it, and you want to go for an ECA. I have a problem with it because I understand it. That's why I have a huge issue with it. If you also look at the ECA, there were supposed to be recording records and maintenance records and testing done. So you only kind of keep them for 5 years. I'd like to see the last 5 years of it. It's not there. I don't think it's there. Also, to make it into a 100-year rain event, you're possibly going to have, if you look at it, I walked it again today. You're possibly going to have to buy 2 or 3 homes to redesign it because you can't go below a 1.4 meter depth because of the water flow. So you're looking at a $2 to possibly a $6 million infrastructure if you got to replace all the storm sewers. So how can you go ask for an ECA for what's there, which isn't in compliance at all? So this motion, this thing, I think it should be divided in 2. One, say we don't own the pond, it's owned by the developer, but not look at the Jules report to go for an ECA, because when they did a peer review in an engineering field, the engineers that wrote the additional 3 reports have to have a duty to respond to it. And I don't believe that the other 2 engineers that this municipality paid for, and McViro, Genevar, and the group from the States have repaired back to Jules, replied back to them and their comments. And that's a normal peer review. When they peer review, they get a chance to respond back to it, is it accurate or not? That hasn't taken place. And I asked for that to be done in previous council meetings and agendas if it was done. I asked the previous Public Works. It hasn't been done. So to jump from here, we don't own the pond, which is right. I found that out in 2 hours when I read the stormwater, the subdivision agreement at Sharp Street. I waited for a year and 6 months, a year and 4 months. But now to jump to a report that was brought in to find out if the pond met a 100-year rain event, and even with their report, it doesn't. By raising it 0.4 meter at the weir, you're changing the whole function of the pond, all the storm sewer and everything up right and flowing to it. And the sizing is too small. So it all has to be looked at. And then if you look at the CN report, you supplied all the data. I read it. When you look at the CN data that you're supposed to abide with CN, they didn't even abide by that one. But we just allowed them to have a whole bunch of land last week. I wish I didn't understand this so well, but I do. And so there's so many red flags here. It's unbelievable. And I know you're hiring a disaster response person. This is probably where he should start, because it is a disaster.
Wait, I just need to go back there. We're not hiring a disaster response person. Yeah, that's someone to look for wires in the ground, Doug. That's not anything to do with stormwater, so.
Understand? The thing is,
I do.
the infrastructure, the taxpayers of the municipality are going to pay for these repairs in the future. And the thing is, they shouldn't be. And they're going to pay. I don't think the stormwater is attached to the water and sewage service. I think all the municipality, the residents of Brighton, are going to have to pay for these repairs. And I sitting here as a councillor, if I could just shut off my brain to this and hadn't done this before, I would say go, but I can't, because I was elected to be responsible to the taxpayers and the ratepayers of the municipality of Brighton. So when you look at this, you can't go to the ECA for that. I would separate this in two. I don't know what I have to do this. One is to say, okay, I agree, we don't own the pond. The second one is to not accept the one to go for an ECA to the Ministry of Environment till all those questions are answered.
So, yeah, we can separate the, we need a motion to separate the motion into its two component parts.
I will put that motion forward.
Is there a seconder before I draft it? Moved by Councillor LeBlanc, second by Councillor Bateman, that council separate the motion into its two parts for separate debate. Is there any discussion on that? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. So the first motion will read, I'll just read them in the order they're given, that council received the staff report. Council received the staff report regarding Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility ownership, design, and maintenance responsibility, and further that staff work in conjunction with the developer of Orchard Gate subdivision and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to update the certificate of approval for the Orchard Gate Stormwater Facility to reflect the recommended improvements from JD Jewell Engineering peer review. And then we'll read the next one separately. And we've heard Councillor LeBlanc's discussion points on this. Is there anything further for members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. As I read some of that motion, the fact that we will be once again involving the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to help with it. So my guess is that they would have staff and expertise to probably help answer some of Mr. LeBlanc's concerns.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc.
They do, but they won't get involved. The Ministry of Environment is enforcement. It is not a part of design or anything. They will not design or help you with your design or question it. They will say, this is what you tell us it'll do. Okay, we agree with you. They're not going to try to help you or anything. What has to happen here? The original report that was written by Jewel has to go back to the other 3 engineering groups so that they can peer review it and question Jewel's report before it even goes to the Ministry of Environment. And plus the design, unfortunately, they put us all the design criteria of all the sewers and stuff. And I couldn't sleep last night, so I had to go through it all. And I went through all the design, so I know now that it's short, it's falling. The other thing I tried to find was the original design, the engineer that designed it. The only thing that I could find was somebody with a Bachelor of Applied Science that worked through all the designs and everything that is now a CET. So he's not a professional engineer that designed the whole pond. The company was, but the individual wasn't. So, but I couldn't find those documents in what was presented to me.
Councillor Tadman?
Mayor, before you call the vote, just a couple of things, if you will allow. I just wanted to say that during the 70s, I had my children uptown doing some shopping, and there was a real downpour. I could not get home on Ontario Street. It was flooded out. You're probably too young. Well, you probably don't remember
I
it.
don't.
But anyways, you're around Terry's age. So, yeah.
Terry's just a little older than I am.
Yeah, a year, I think. But anyways, Coles was flooded out, the car wash, and then there's pictures in the papers of all this, and the car shop. It was so flooded out down, I didn't know how to get home by then because, you know, the routes to Ontario Street. So I went to my husband's work and he said, we'll get through. And when we got down to Harbor Street, it was so flooded, but he just stepped on the gas and didn't worry about it. And we did get through. And that was just an event. It wasn't a 100-year event. And that's what concerns me about Butler Creek. I've seen it flood, and I've seen it flood down on Harbor Street too. So if you will allow me, I would just like to ask Councillor LeBlanc, because he certainly has a lot, I know nothing about this. I just have to go by the opinion, the educated opinion of others. So when you say that the pond as it is right now isn't large enough for for a 100-year event, to expand that pond, I heard you say something about we'd have to buy, or not us, because we don't own it, that the people that own that pond at the present time would have to maybe buy out some homes. Is that correct? That I understood what you were saying?
To answer your question, if the Jules report on peer reviewed is correct, he is asking to meet a 50-year rain event.
Mhm.
You have to use the freeboard that has to be there of 1 meter, and it might possibly meet a 50-year rain event. That's right in his report. No time does it say that it's supposed to meet a 100, which was supposed to be designed for. The thing is, to enlarge it, you can't go towards the railroad track because of the second pond. You
No.
can't go near Butler Creek. You have to come towards Royal Gala. So the berm is less than 5 meters from the homes. If you look at the size of it, to make it twice the size, you're going to be right in the people, right in the middle of their homes, right on the edge of the street. So it depends how you go, because you can't go towards the railroad track, can't go towards Butler Creek. So you're left one direction to come. And that's where you can walk it yourself, you can look at it. So the thing is, to go now and to get an ECA, what are you going to tell the ministry? We have a design engineer that says it doesn't meet 50-year event. We got to use a 50-year event. No, they're using a thing of flooding. Well, that's masking. That pond was never meant for flooding. If you look what a stormwater management pond is designed for, there's 30 other things that it's designed for other than flood. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gooding, do you have any comment before we go down the voting road here?
It's been Mayor to Council, a lot of moving parts here. I'll just answer the Councillor Tadman's comment about the flooding on the streets. So when we review distribution or collection of stormwater, you have your primary and your secondary outlets. So your primary outlet is your pipes, and that's what we designed to a 5-year storm event. Above that is your secondary outlet, which was up to the 100-year storm event, and that ends up going through your curb line and perhaps in some spots in your boulevard. And how your roads are graded such, you put the pond at the low spot so that at the 100-year or the 5-year plus event, where you might see localized ponding until the pipes can catch up, it'll surface flow to the pond facility, and that's where you have your intake spillway. With regards to review of the pond, so the design is changing from a 100-year storm to it's 50 years, and then above 50 years is when the spillway would come into play. And the concept behind it is called beat the peak. So the idea is when the watershed receives water, for the time for the top end of the watershed to come down to the lower end of the watershed, the idea with this pond is you would release from the 100 to the 50-year mark at a higher rate to beat the peak. And then in order to, instead of adding to the peak and releasing at a controlled rate. So it actually allows it to get ahead of the storm discharge down the creek and into Lake Ontario. And it's just the nature of where Brighton's located. And I mean, the general rule of thumb is 100-year storm. It's just that's without looking at, we'll say, time patterns of the creek and whatnot. Brian Keane, the engineer that did the peer review with Jewel, he used to work with Conservation Authority, had a lot of insider information on how the creeks operate and whatever, was able to review it and provide a recommendation that by increasing the spillway, we can beat the peak. That was presented to the Conservation Authority and Janet Noyes as a PNG, and she's agreed to it. And then that was peer reviewed by the developer's engineer, and that's Mr. Oram with Monument Geomatics, who, in order to put his stamp to the letter, reviewed it and as well. So it didn't go all the way back to EOR, the person that did the 2019 stormwater master plan. However, it has been successfully reviewed by PNGs as well as staff. Other than that, we just feel like this is a reasonable approach to come to a solution. I mean, to take out people's homes is not reasonable. I mean, the fact that downstream, you have the creek right there. The one thing identified in Jules' report is that, one of the conclusions is that there's no risk between the pond and the ultimate outlet, which would be the receiving body, meaning the creek. And that's always a concern when we look at these, and that's where you'd have spillways and whatnot. Other than that, we recommend that we proceed with the recommendation or the recommendation that a letter has been sent to the MECP to review, and we're waiting for further feedback. And part of the delay, we'll say, to get you guys a response and comments was, I've come into this project fairly late in the game in March, but I was hoping more of a concrete response from the MECP so that we had a more concrete path to move forward. It's just the letter hasn't come back yet.
Thank you for that. Are you confident that staff can indeed, if we pass this motion, work with the developer and the MECP to find a path forward?
Correct.
Thank you.
And if the comments come back otherwise, they disagree with these recommendations, then that's where we're going to backtrack with the Conservation Authority, the developer engineer, and as well as perhaps we have to Jewel Engineering to come to a solution.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc.
Thank you, Mayor. In your comments, you said that basically you would use the road and everything to sustain for your 100-year rain event. I'll put myself here so you can do your 100-year rain event. If you look at the dike, it's 6 feet to 8 feet above the road. So you tell me how the water from the road is going to get into that pond or flow into it. The pond has already overflowed twice and then flowed into people's basements. When I was walking there, the individuals came to see me. So, and the reason why, it's supposed to meet, the original ECA says it's supposed to meet a 100-year rain event. The pond itself, to retain the water, 35.9 hours of retention time. In Jewel Engineering's report, it says it has 19.5 hours of retention time. To go to 24, they got to use the freeboard. If the freeboard gorges or erodes, it takes off the pond, is useless. It doesn't do anything. Also, if you look at the original design, if you look at Jewel Engineering's report, basically it's 41.5 cubic meters per second that they're looking for. The pond is designed with an outlet of 560 liters per second. At 41.6 cubic meters per second, there's 1,000 liters in a cubic meter. So when Jewel does their engineering, it's 41,600 liters per second. It doesn't even come close to the 650 liters per second that the system is designed for. That's in the reports. That's in your report. So when you look at this, you tell me how 441,600 liters per second is going to flow into a pipe to keep it at 560 liters per second. And if you look at the overland route, when it was designed at 1,600 liters per second. And if you look at the size it was supposed to be at 2,800 cubic meters, you go walk that pond and look at it, it's nowhere near 2,800 cubic meters. So if you consider me a survey, designs, and the capacity at 1.4 meters that it retains that, I have no problem. But if you want to go with these facts and figures, I can go with them with you all night long. It's wrong and it needs to be peer reviewed. The residents of Brighton shouldn't be on the hook for large expansion on maybe or should have or could have. It should be right. So, and it should be somebody other than the engineers. And if you look at your insurance for the liability, it's only good for 2 years. So once it's done, you can't go back after it. The residents of Brighton and the taxpayer will be on the hook if it's not done right. So unfortunately, I have the knowledge on this. Thank you.
Do you have any comment, Mr. Gooding?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor LeBlanc is I haven't recently looked at the overall grading plan for the site, but I was presuming it's the pathway that when you get to was like Royal Gala Drive that you walk down, that would be the spillway or the low point. And that was probably the purpose why they put that there. With regards to the berm, the flooding, I mean, I can review again and see if there's a spillway, but I mean, generally they'd have the secondary overland flow route to that location. The other thing is with the storm events, it's a 24-hour storm, 24-hour storm event. So 100-year storm, it's the volume of water characteristic to a 100-year storm within a 24-hour period. And a 100-year storm can be a 1-hour storm, a 2-hour storm, 5-hour storm. And what it is when you get those torrential downpours, they could be characteristic at that moment of a 100-year storm, but over a 24-hour period, it's equivalent to maybe a 5-year storm or maybe less and whatnot. So that's where the ponds are designed, is to fill up, and it's like a bathtub. It fills up and drains down, fills up and drains down. So it's not a consistent intake going into that pond facility. The outtake would be consistent based on the facility filling up and discharging at a controlled rate, and that's the purpose of it. It's just once you hit the 50-year storm, this pond, if we get approval from the MECP, is it would allow it to from that slight period between 100 and 50 years to discharge at a higher rate, so it gets to that freeboard level again.
And regardless of all the numbers that are being thrown about, quite frankly, it seems to make sense to me that we would in fact work with the developer and the MECP to solve this problem, rather than not doing that, which is what we're contemplating right now. So if we're not working with the developer, I just want council, if we're going to defeat this motion, I want council to turn their minds to what's the next step. If we're not going to work with the developer and the MECP, what is the next step? I think that answer, we'll have to put a motion on the floor to come up with what are we going to do to solve this problem? How best do we solve this problem? And I think the best way to do it, knowing that we don't own the pond, is get the developer to fix the pond and the MECP to work with us and the developer to make that happen. Councillor LeBlanc, as per the motion.
The thing is this, the ECA was submitted for a 100-year rain event. The pond would hold a 100-year rain event. Now what I'm listening from staff is, yeah, the EC was wrongly submitted, doesn't meet the 100-year rain event, it only meets the 25, so we're going to use the road, we're going to use overland, we're going to use everything. But the thing is, it's in violation of the ECA. Why have ECA and why have regulations if we're going to turn around and say, well, it's already built, so we're going to try to find rules around it? I have a problem with that. If somebody put their name and put their stamp and they submitted an ECA to the Administrative Environment that is supposed to meet a 100-year rain event, start from that point, bring it to the 100-year rain event as it was supposed to be established in the rain event. Because before I got on council, the previous homeowners and the council, the homes were flooding there because they were using the road in the rain event because it wasn't all there. And they were here at this council all the time. Now they got our stuff, it overflows, we haven't had the rain events. But the thing is, follow the rules. They said to this council, and the past council voted, that said that it will meet a 100-year rain event. in 2006. It was built in 2004. We're here now in 2022. And we're trying to say, well, they're misrepresented to the last council. And the council was given. And if you're going to go through that, well, why come in front of council? If somebody's going to come in front of council, tell you that it meets a 100-year rain event, make it, you meet a 100-year event, and then start from there. Don't say, well, it's built, we're going to try to do this, we're going to waive this way, we're going to waive that way. There was a commitment made and those councillors voted on that information and it wasn't there. So the thing is, if we start now wavering here at this point, when do we stop? Meet the 100-year, I don't mind working with the developer, the staff working with them, everything. But let's follow the rules that was presented to the councils in the past and the council now. It doesn't meet a 100-year rain event. It only meets a 25. That's why Jubilee Engineering was hired. It only meets a 50 if you use the 1 meter freeboard. 1 meter freeboard has to be there. The retention time and the numbers are all there. Go back to the principles. It was passed by council, a 1 in 100-year rain event. It doesn't meet it. Jules Engineering even says it. So I have a problem with trying to say to somebody, you didn't build it right, but we're going to work with you to go around the rules that you should have built right at the start. And that's what I have a problem with. So there we go.
Councillor Rowley.
I don't see that. I don't see
neither.
that we're going around the rules. My guess is what I'm reading here is that we want the Ministry of Environment to look at what's there, that we want the developer to complete maintenance and design improvement work. So the developer is going to do it. So before we assume anything. So my guess is we're not assuming it until all of these problems will be fixed. And I would also guess that working with Lower Trent and with the Ministry of Environment, that these things will be fixed before we assume the thing. So it's not our dime at this. I don't see it being our dime at this stage. I see it, let them put the list together, let the developer look after this on his dime, and then we'll assume it when it gets done. Is that what I'm reading? Or am I reading this? I'm more confused now
I think so.
than
But
since we
But
started.
what I'm really concerned about is that if we don't pass the motion to work with the developer and the MECP, that will be left on the hook to do it ourselves. And I don't want to be on the hook to do it ourselves. I want the developer to take care of this because they own it and they need to fix it before we assume it. I think the best thing to do is to pass this motion so that we are working together with the developer, with the MECP. We've already worked with the Lower Trent. Their engineer has put their stamp of approval on the plan that we've put forward to the MECP. And it's been reviewed, or the JD Jewell was the designer of the plan. And it's also been stamped by the developer's engineer. So we've got 3 professional engineers who have either designed or put their eyes to this and have moved this plan forward to the MECP. I'm not qualified to go against that, quite frankly, and neither is anyone else in this room.
So let's get it done before we have a 100-year event.
Councillor Anderson.
I've been anxiously waiting to say something almost exactly what you're saying.
Well, I'm sorry I stole your thunder.
I think, no, I think Councillor Rowley is absolutely right too. We need to go with the flow, so to speak. I'm really impressed with Councillor LeBlanc's knowledge and your presentation. I understand it even better the way you explained it. So thank you for that. But we do have to, we've determined who owns it. That was going in here. That's what we've been anxiously trying to find out. So whoever owns it is responsible for it, and we need to hold them responsible. I know Mr. Castleman said it's a minor cost. I think the cost will be, I'm not going to use the word, but it'll be a magnitude of cost if we don't let this play out the way we're the motion's reading. You're right, we will take ownership of it in a different way, maybe not on paper, but we'll be taking ownership, and their cost to the taxpayer is certainly going to be there. When you mentioned about losing homes, I think that's a bit of a, I don't think that's something we need the people to fear about at the moment. I think, that gets out there tomorrow about homes going down in Orchard Gate. I think that's a shame, but I think we need to let this play. We've got professionals working here. We've got, and like you just said, we've got all these consultants and their names, and they got their stamps on there. Somebody will pay for this. So, but we need the owner to, and I think the owner is stepping up from what I heard, from what I read. So let's the owner of the pond, let's get her done.
Councillor Tadman.
Mayor, I think you misspoke when you said there's nobody here that really understands this. And I think that's an insult to Councillor LeBlanc because he spent a
No,
lot of his career.
I'm not taking away from Councillor LeBlanc's knowledge. There's no professional engineer around this table. That's all I meant.
You didn't say professional engineer, but I think he's professional in what he's talking about. And I certainly look for a solution. And I definitely believe that it shouldn't have taken over a year to find out ownership, because it's pretty easy to go and find out who owns what in a very short period of time when you go to the county and look. But if we can find a solution to this, I think more than anything else, and I do agree with Councillor LeBlanc in the fact that if it wasn't built for 100 years, then it should have been to begin with. And if we could put something in, I might even consider going forward with this, if we could put something in this motion that says that we insist on it being brought to 100-year event, rain event. Other than that, I can't support this. And as far as you saying it would be left on us to fix this pond, not if we don't assume it. And they can't go forward with anything else in their next two subdivisions if they don't fix this, because that council controls that too, making that decision.
Right. So if we were to add something to the effect of that the design be consistent with a 100-year storm event, would that satisfy your concern, Councillor Tadman?
Well, when Councillor LeBlanc, and I've heard it said here before, that the MOECC, how did you put it? They don't look at the actual undergrounds. No. You make your application and they either agree or disagree, but they don't know what's there underground, right?
That's right. Enforce. You tell them what it's going to meet and you do it. They told them what it would meet, but they didn't build it. So they're in violation of the ECA. And that's why I've asked once Jules' report came to us, I did ask this council, I did ask the director of
remember
public
that.
works if he had gone to the ministry and reported the violation of the ECA. He never did. You have 90 days. It also puts the municipality, because we were all aware once that report that was done that it didn't meet the ECA. I also brought that up at a council meeting. If they can, and they don't do anything wishy-washy, they should, if they just wanted the pond and go, they should have never put all the rest of the information in front of me and made the comment that it was only for flooding, because that's just enraged me even more. And just I couldn't sleep. I read the whole thing. If they want to put in that they guarantee the new design, the pond, not other structures, will meet a 100-year rain event, then I would say yes, I would go with it.
Councillor Bateman.
I was just going to say that same thing. I could support it if it has in there what Councillor Tadman was talking about, the 100-year rain event. I do have a follow-up question, if that's okay. Would the ownership determine, I don't know if this is for Mr. Gooding or the CAO, maintenance records have to be maintained on all these ponds. So do we know if they've maintained the maintenance records for it? And if they haven't, or if they have we reviewed them? I just want to see, I don't want to see the municipality at risk of paying for something that we're not responsible for again. So do we know that the maintenance records are up to speed before we engage the MOECP?
Mr. Gooding.
Through the mayor to the council is I haven't seen any records. I'm not aware of any. These ponds are designed for 15-year cycles. I mean, there is maintenance where you look for trash or overgrown vegetation and whatnot, but I don't have any, I'm not aware of any records that we received on that.
Councillor Rowley.
So if my friends here around the table decide to turn this down, what's our next, what happens next? Do we just wait for another report in another few months? I mean, we're not going to do anything now. When are we going to do it?
Well, the reality is we've already submitted the plan to the MECP, so I guess we would wait for the MECP to get back to staff, and then staff would bring another report to council advising of that. We'd have to make a decision
So then
of
we wait.
what next steps would be, and or whether we want to push back to the MECP and the engineers for further design work, I guess. Mr. Gooding?
Yeah, at this stage, we basically have to wait for the ECP to agree to the modifications that were proposed. I haven't looked at the numbers of the property myself, but I believe there will be challenges getting it up to the 100-year storm just based on the area that's available. And I wouldn't be surprised if the result back might be to use perhaps pipe storage or whatnot in order to get that volume to be a 100-year storm, even though it would provide no benefit based on the conservation authorities and Jewel Engineering's and Monument Engineering's review.
Councillor Anderson.
I'll just make it simple. I think we need to let it play out and wait till we get these reports back and go from there. Take it on now. I don't think it's a good idea.
Councillor Tadman.
I spent quite a bit of time today going through this and I got really quite cross-eyed with all the numbers because I'm not an engineer and I don't understand that part of it, but I do understand when in the legal terms of things that the ownership of any of these ponds is the responsibility of the owner. And it's not 2 and 5 years. The way I read it, it's or as long as you own that pond. And so these people own the pond now, but we're going to be taking it on forever. And if there's no logs in all this time to say that it's been maintained, then we're going against our ECA there too. So it's hard for me to support something like this when I almost feel like in some ways, as long as we aren't on top of things, then we're not getting a true picture.
Mr. Gooding.
So the ECA remains in the developer's name, so it's their responsibility to keep the records. Prior to assumption, what's proposed here is that they would essentially reset it. I mean, they're going to do all the maintenance, they're going to modify the pond, clean it out, bring it back to day one condition, and then hand it over to the municipalities. So at that point, I mean, any prior records, I mean, if the MECP wants to follow up on that, they can, but I mean, the pond would be like new at that point.
Councillor Tadman.
Follow up on that, but because it's never been tested or anything in all of that time, I'm not saying it has, but it could be polluting the whole system, Butler Creek right down to the lake.
I'm not aware of that.
There's a lot of construction that's gone on and there could be a lot of spills and all kinds of things that could have happened. And that just worries me because I know that for the first couple of years, as I understood it, that it was supposed to be overseen by, and you were never around. I'm not holding you, in any way responsible for this, but the municipality staff were supposed to be checking it out the first couple of years. And then after that, it is the responsibility of the owner to make sure that they keep it logs. We spent, what was it, somewhere around 200,000 to do this whole study on stormwater, and I don't think we're following anything that it advised.
I don't think that's true at all. Mr. Gooding.
So I believe it was in Jules' report, they mentioned that based on the sediment loading of the pond is by 2024, they'd have to clean it out. And that's because the increased sediment contributed by the development. So what happens is once all the homes are built, the grass is in place, whatnot, we don't get as heavy of a sediment load. And at that time is typically when the municipality would assume this, and that's when they would clean out the forebay, which it's designed for like a 15-year cycle or 20-year cycle or however this one was designed to accumulate sediment and before we have to go there and clean it.
And this portion of the development is built out, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
And the portion of the development that drains to this pond, we don't expect any more houses to be added to that.
That's correct.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc.
No, Your Honor, we don't expect any more houses to be added
It's
to
your
that.
worship. It's your worship. Stop
Your
giving me a
worship, I was
promotion.
gonna say, but the planning, the director of planning, the last meeting, basically said with the new designs that basically pond 3 and pond 2 would be flowing to these ponds. So they are going to be adding the new homes to it. That wasn't his comments at the last
I
planning
don't
meeting
know
last
that,
week.
that's not accurate.
Well, that's what he said.
No, it's not.
Well,
It is
yeah.
absolutely not what he said. He said the exact opposite of that.
I think you better listen to the recording.
I'd be happy to,
Yes. I'll listen.
and I will be right.
So when you say that the pond will be brought back to day one during 2024, day one, is it a 25-year rain event or a 100-year rain event? As per the ECA that was submitted to the Ministry of
Mr.
Environment.
Gooding,
It'll be as per the current amended ECA that if the or the MECP agrees to the modifications as recommended, that is the design that's proposed, is to bring it up to that state. The original ECA was actually incorrect. I mean, we went back and looked at the what was permitted in that ECA and what was actually built and designed, and the pond was actually built 30% bigger than the original ECA. So the pond in its current configuration is not even correct to the ECA. So it had to be amended and corrected to it regardless.
anything further from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc?
So the new ECA that you submitted, is it for a 100-year rain event or a 50-year rain event? What a rain event is it for?
It is for the 50-year rain event.
I'm done.
Councillor Tadman?
Well, we've tossed this around the table enough. If you would kindly add the 100-year rain event to that, so that at least future councils, and I don't know who will be here to make those decisions when all this comes back, but it probably won't come before this present council, or at least not likely. So at least both staff and those who will be sitting around here will have their eyes on the fact that the council of today want to make sure that was considered.
Councillor Rowley, this is your motion. Are you in favor of adding that to this motion? So the wording would be something like, and that the pond be designed to meet a 100-year rain event.
Ask a question of staff.
Yep.
Are you okay with that?
Mr. Gooding?
I have my, we'll say, concerns is one is the cost for the engineering. Is right now I have the developer on board. We're moving forward. We're trying to find the resolution of this. The risk concern I have is if we can't make the 100-year storm, for one, the cost, basically you're redesigning a whole new pond at that point. I mean, it's not something, it's not just like a Lego block we can add another part to. So there's going to be a significant cost. And where I'm concerned is the developer, and I haven't recently, we'll say, gone back and read word for word along the line of the original subdivision agreement. And I'm not sure if that agreement just holds them to the attached document being the original stormwater pond. So I don't know how that would play out if the developer doesn't agree to spend 50,000 or whatever the cost is for re-engineering, the additional physical cost to expand the pond, and says no. His lawyer or their lawyer advises that based on the original subdivision agreement at that time, they were obligated to build the pond in accordance to this design, not this new 100-year. And so by having the developer on board right now and having a path forward with many qualified individuals in agreement, I just feel like it's the most reasonable and easiest path. We'll say that still provides flood protections to the residents. It's not something that I know the 100-year storm, but that's just a standard. I mean, and if engineers can come up with different designs, whether it be a dry pond, wet pond, wetland, pipe storage, whatever, it's the framework they work in. And then the MECP is you have engineers and you have a peer review, and then you send off the MECP, and they would either agree to it, whether it's good engineering practice or not, for the purpose of flood protection. And that's what the goal of this report was to get to. I am concerned that if we deviate from that, it's going to create bigger problems.
I'm concerned that we pass this motion, the MECP approves the changes to the ECA at the current design. Where does that leave us? And
we can roll back. I mean, it just means we're going to change it again.
change the ECA again.
But again, that's cost and it's who's bearing that. I mean, who's
Right,
paying
but
for that?
Presumably, the developer would have recourse if they wanted to, I imagine.
I would have to go back and see the original agreement because the original agreement might say it's this pond, it's this design, council approved it or staff's,
Yeah.
you know. And it's just, I'd have to get an opinion on that to see what leverage we have or where we're at with the original agreement. I mean, this is a 15-year-old agreement.
So Councillor Rowley, this is your motion.
I'm going to go back to the 50-year. I'm satisfied with what I'm hearing from staff at this stage. I would like to see us move forward on this. I'm hoping that the Ministry of Environment will hold their feet to the fire when we get to that stage. And I'll wait for that report as it comes. Thank you.
So you would not like to see that on this motion? Okay. So the motion reads that, go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
It's just that, through you, Mayor. In front of this, since I've been a councillor, I have approved stormwater, we have approved as a council stormwater management plan, in the pipe, over land and stuff. But it come to council with those things. They were already part. They didn't have the 100-year rain event, they didn't have the pond. This council has already approved those things. The one that came in front of the previous council, and I've read it very well, I've read the design and what they submitted to the Ministry of Environment. It said in the document, it's right there, it'll meet a 100-year rain event. That's what the councils voted for. That's what was supposed to be built, and that's what should have been built. So when you say about piping and this, I've gone with those. I've agreed with those. Another subdivision. All the ones that were designed for 100-year rain event, they meet it. So now we're saying that other developers that have built in this town that have spent the money, some of them have done Peterson event, Timmins event, you should have never done it. You shouldn't have spent the $1 million or $3 million to do it. You just had to wait your time and come in front of council and have a lower event. I can't go for that. I'm very sorry. The council voted at the time for 100-year rain event, and that's what should have been built.
Is that, go ahead.
I just wouldn't mind, just adding and I haven't seen it myself, but I mean, with climate change and changing weather patterns, I mean, you might see storms that back, we'll say in the 80s, 90s, were designed to the 100-year storm event and that no longer meet that criteria. I mean, developers don't tend to build more than they have to. Well, they're not building less. It's just the climate has changed, and now that maybe it's no longer meeting that standard because of changing weather patterns. And solutions like this and whatnot that are engineered and reviewed might be a result in the future. It just, in this case, I mean, I know it's based on, so we'll say situational, but it's something that we might have to be facing in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
I'd like to call a recorded vote when you do it.
Very well, thank you.
I think perhaps it could be just subject to verification of this, whatever Doug's, Councillor LeBlanc says it's he read that it's in the
Mr.
agreement. You're not sure about that? So
Mr.
if we're not sure, let's verify it and then move forward with Councillor. We can make the decision tonight to move based on verifying that. We're getting conflicting information now.
Councillor Tadman.
I'm not
Excuse me,
saying
but I
anybody's
think,
right or anybody's
I don't
wrong.
think we can make a decision if that is the point in question.
Well,
We
then-
need
then
to
we-
defer and
we can
allow
defer this.
staff who's
Then we should.
only been
defer.
here a short time to review what the original
Yeah.
agreement was.
We can defer this part of the motion to
Yeah.
another meeting. We can go on to the next part of the motion and debate that. Because I think sounds like council wants to see the original subdivision agreement.
Council and
staff
would
should
like to
review
see-
it, right?
yeah.
No, I think I agree with that.
And that's, I'll just follow up I mean, maybe at that time we can have some comments back from the MECP as
Right.
well.
Well, let's do that. I might. Your motion.
Yeah. Actually, why don't Doug, I have the floor. Excuse me. Why don't we defer the whole thing, both parts of the motion, and we can bring the whole report back with any updates and subdivision agreement information so the council can make a good decision. Is that fair? Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to bring forward when I had my hand up. I'd like to see it deferred and get all the information before we make a decision. Because we need to make the best decision for the residents and for the developer as far as that goes. I'm not so concerned in financially what it's going to cost the developer, because all the developers have to have their feet held to the fire and do what's right.
Are you making that motion, Councillor Cadman?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion's moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council defer the staff report to the regular meeting in July. Councillor Bateman.
Just
Actually,
a
that's-
question for clarification,
Yeah.
and probably to you, Mr. Gooding. I've heard tonight that the ECA, the original ECA, the design was for a 100-year rain event. But then we're talking about what's in the subdivision agreement. But I thought I heard you say that the pond was actually built 30% bigger than it was supposed to. So therefore, would it not meet the 100? I'm not as technical as Doug, but if we're saying it's 30% larger than what they were required, weren't they required to meet the 100-year rain event originally?
So going back to the records is a lot of times what happens with development is because there's such a delay with getting an ECA, developers will they'll submit the design to the municipality and then also submit it into the MECP in order to get in the queue. And that way it's running in parallel. And I believe what happened here was there was about 4 months period where they submitted, staffs continued to work with their engineer and the conservation authority, and that's where you ended up with a larger pond. The comments came back from the MECP approving based on the original application, which was a smaller pond. The larger pond was built, and then future successive engineering for other phases and this development was based on the engineering of the larger pond. The document I believe for the larger pond is attached as a schedule to the subdivision agreement, and that would outline what they have to build to, and at that time, what the standards were built based on. So my concern is because that's attached to the original agreement, is perhaps that's all they're obligated to build, even if things have changed, standards have changed, weather conditions have changed. And the concern would be if we push, or sorry, if additional asks are put upon them, do they go back to the agreement and say, well, we've fulfilled it based on our agreement and their legal opinion is such. But I mean, that's something based on the motion or it's put forth, is I definitely can bring back to council and get you feedback.
Just a follow-up to that. So what was dropped then was if they had one proposal that went in and the ECA was different, at some point then the ECA should have been adjusted to match what they sent in parallel. And
That's correct.
why they're not matching. So there could be penalties, not, I'm assuming, to the municipality, but perhaps the developer, if the MOECP wanted to, for not upgrading the ECA to match what they said they were going to do. Because I think that's what we heard that their role is, to make sure they do what they say that they're going to do.
That's their objective. I mean, I don't know. But I mean, I agree with you. Is staff did miss that. We didn't, usually a lot of times once things get moving and yeah.
So we have a motion to defer on the floor. Motion to defer is not debatable. I did allow some further discussion so that we could get some more clarification. I assume you do not want and I shouldn't, but I'm assuming you don't want a recorded vote on a deferral motion, Councillor LeBlanc? Thank you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We've already debated it, ladies and gentlemen. The next report is the Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment. Chief Thompson, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
No, I don't at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council receive the staff report regarding the Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment for information purposes. And further, the council award the contract for the preparation of a Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment to the Emergency Management Group at a cost of $54,474, not including HST. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next report is natural gas servicing in the Sharp Road Industrial Park. Mr. Hagerman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight? Thank you. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council received the staff report regarding natural gas servicing in the Sharp Road Industrial Park, and further, the council gives the authority to move forward with the installation of natural gas and enter into agreement with Enbridge for the Sharp Road Industrial Park for the amount of $161,000 plus HST. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to notices of motion and motions, and they are all motions this evening. The first is moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by myself. Mayor Ostrander, whereas it is desirable for the municipality of Brighton to have a flower to be designated as the flower for the municipality. And whereas June 18th has been proclaimed as Garden Day in the municipality of Brighton, now therefore be it resolved that the municipality of Brighton Council endorses the designation of a flower for the community. And further, that council seeks input from the Brighton Horticultural Society Garden Club for the designation of a flower. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Just the fact that it comes at quite a surprise that Councillor LeBlanc and Mayor Ostrander are bringing this forward. Neither are wallflowers. Maybe
don't know.
wildflowers,
I
and I'm
don't-
sure we can think of some other
I
flowers.
don't even know where to go with this. But I promise that Doug and I will hold hands as we declare our new flower.
Oh, please don't. We don't want that kind of thing happening in our council chambers.
It won't be in council chambers.
Out in a field of flowers.
Absolutely, absolutely. A field of whatever flower is designated to be the flower of the municipality of Brighton, and time will tell. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, how this came forward, I was walking the road and two ladies approached me and they said, we just moved to Brighton. What is the official flower of Brighton? I said, I don't know. I said, that's what I thought. And I said, I will find out. I said, I know a person that will know. I called the mayor. The mayor said, he scratched his head. I don't think we have one. I did just figured that. And he said, we should put a motion in and get this in. I said, he says, I'll write it up. I said, fine. I said, we got to get something done. And then I happened to meet the people from the Horticultural Society in Sobeys. I said, what's the flower? Maybe they knew what one. And I told them we would approach them and they were all on board with this so quick. And thank you for writing this up. That's how
you.
we ended up with trying to find a flower. Just
Anything,
by asking a question.
anything further from members of council? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Easy. Next motion is moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by myself, Mayor Ostrander, whereas some of the committees of council are actively involved in hiring groups, organizations to perform, provide a service to our community, and whereas it is often impossible and also time consuming for community volunteers to obtain 3 quotes for such services, especially when it's the desire of these committees to have local performers and service providers for events. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Brighton directs staff to prepare an alternative purchasing procedure for committees of council that removes the need to get 3 quotes while still allows for proper oversight and internal controls. Is there any discussion, Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. And as you can see, previously, the deputy mayor moved this, and she and I have had some discussion, especially while dealing with Applefest. It's been becoming more difficult, and especially over the last couple of years with COVID, that we have found with our committee, with the volunteers searching and trying to find event specialists and just different things to get in. It's, you know, some people have just closed up shop. So it's very difficult to come up with more than 1 quote for certain things that we've had over the last few years. So we were just hoping that, you know, we work with staff on this. Volunteers try to kind of search out some of this, and it's becoming difficult. And we just want the staff that we have supporting our committees to be able to just carry this forward to, you know, through the finance department without having to come up always with 3 quotes. These aren't, you know, big dollar values, you know, we're not spending $20,000, $30,000. So I'm sure staff could come up with
The
something.
vast majority of these invoices come in at the $200, $300, $400 level.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely correct. We do want locals performing at our, you know, Memorial Park concerts in the park and at Canada Day and wherever
Right.
else. And if we have to go out for 3 quotes every time for, you know, a group of community volunteers, it does become onerous.
Right, especially for some of the bigger price items that we get, like for Canada Day, getting bouncy castles and things like that. Those things come with, they're a little bit more expensive, but they're, again, having to search out. I think in one case, we were only able to maybe get 2 quotes. So we have to juggle that as far as dealing with the finance department. So this would be just something to kind of open that up a little
Yeah, and
bit.
it doesn't say so in the motion, but I'll hint here, Mr. Castleman, that perhaps when staff comes back with a recommendation, part of that recommendation would be to ensure that whatever happens from an expenditure point of view is available to the public so that we are continuing to be transparent and accountable to the public, even though we're not going out for 3 quotes. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
you, Mayor, I just was reminded as I was reading this again that the digital archives, they specifically need certain technical things for their productions. And they found it very hard to get 3 quotes because some places they just it didn't exist or the supply had run out. And especially during this time when it's hard to get supplies. So this would pertain to them too.
All committees of council. So yeah.
Okay.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, and in getting 3 quotes, I agree with this. If they're getting things done and the new Apple Fest coming, people have shut their doors and this is easily supported.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Yeah, I've got it here. Thank you. And this is the motion that was added to this evening's agenda, and I'll thank you both for the longest motion I've seen in a long time. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Whereas the Ontario Amber Alert is a warning system that quickly alerts the public of a suspected abduction of children who are in imminent danger, and whereas the goal is to broadcast as much information about the child, the abductor, and suspect vehicles as quickly as possible so that the public can respond with any relevant information that might lead to the child's safe return. And whereas people are encouraged to share the Amber Alert with as many people as possible if a child or vulnerable person is abducted, spreading the information quickly is critical to their safe return. And whereas an Amber Alert makes the public aware to keep an eye out for the child, vulnerable person, suspect, and vehicle described in the alert, if they spot them, try to gather as many details as they can, including the specific location, where they saw them, the time, the direction they were traveling in, and any other identifying details that will help to locate them. And whereas an Amber Alert gives citizens instructions to call 911 or the phone number included in the alert immediately if they have a trip or a sighting related to an Amber Alert. An Amber Alert will only be activated if the police have confirmed that an abduction has taken place and there is reason to believe the victim is in danger of serious physical injury. And there is information available that, if broadcast to the public, could assist in the safe recovery of the victim. And whereas it is essential to remember that an Amber Alert is not always appropriate in every circumstance and that their continued effectiveness depends on ensuring that they are only used in cases that meet the above criteria. And whereas the recent tragic death of 11-year-old Draven Graham, is it Dravon? Draven Graham, showed that the Amber Alert system is flawed when it comes to vulnerable children who can go missing but are not abducted. And whereas at the time this motion was written, there have been almost 75,000 citizens who had signed a petition on change.org requesting that a Draven Alert be created. And whereas it is clear that there needs to be an addition to the alert system to allow for law enforcement to send out an alert for vulnerable children who go missing under circumstances that do not involve an abduction, but are at serious risk of injury or death. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of Brighton and its council endorse the following: that the Minister of the Solicitor General and the Commissioner of Ontario Provincial Police, as well as the Premier's office, be requested to make the necessary changes to the Amber Alert system and to create a new alert called the Draven Alert, which will protect vulnerable children who have not been abducted but are at high risk of danger, injury, death, and alert the public that they are missing. And that this motion be sent to all municipalities across Ontario and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for endorsement. Is there any discussion? Councillor LeBlanc.
In listening to the newscast, there was an OPP officer being interviewed by a news lady, and they were asking these questions, and he said the alert system doesn't allow this because he wasn't adopted. Everything gets out. He wasn't abducted, but he was lost, and they have the resources that they can just hit certain towers within 2 miles to the people's cell phones that are there to alert that there's a child missing in that area. Do you see him? Can you see him? Can you find him? That possibly could have saved him, but they're not allowed to do it because of a slight little wording in the regulation. So I I do have a few connections, so I did call. And they said, well, you would have to do an amendment and with a number of municipalities that would put it forward. So Brighton Council, which is a leader and wants to be a leader in this, basically would be the first one to put it out and send it out to other municipalities if it could be supported. And if the government would make the slight changes, because if it saves one child, it's worth it. So, and you know, one of the things that might be a little bit of a story, but I do have a big heart when it comes to this and children with special needs, because I have one myself. So
Thank you for
mine
that.
never missed. So this is why we put this here and to put this forward to see if council would support this and also send it to the rest of the municipalities. We get a lot of them from other municipalities for tax base and everything else, but this one would be here to help out for the vulnerable. And this Brighton would be the leader. So the first municipality to send it out.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Anderson.
I think it's all good. Is this motion from another municipality?
This is ours.
It's ours? Yeah. Okay, I just, because it's mentioned about 35,000 people have already. Okay,
That's through the, I imagine through the change.org website, right?
all right.
Councillor Tadman.
I think it's a great idea. And we had a situation right here in Brighton where a former staff member's dad who suffered with Alzheimer's went missing. And if this had been available at the time, he could have maybe been found before he suffered from the inclement weather. So children, of course, we always care most, you know, to look after, but anybody that's vulnerable, and that covers that there too. So
Does. Thank you. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Bateman.
I was just going to add, I think this is it's a great thing for Brighton to push this forward and be the advocate for change. It's tragic that it takes a tragedy to push for change, but it happens all the time. But for us to be leaders in the municipality of Brighton to advocate for change and push it on to the premier and the police commissioner and the solicitor is a great thing, because this is on a different level, but similar to what happened in minor sports when minor hockey here in Brighton instituted it, and everybody else did as well. Rowan's Law, because it took a tragic loss of a rugby player, a young female, had 2 concussions and wasn't aware of it, but it took somebody to actually advocate and push for change, and now that's become mandatory that you can't participate in youth sports until you've taken the concussion training, and that's for anybody that's involved in kids, so they can recognize the symptoms and the signs. This is something different on a whole nother level, but this is something that is long overdue, and it's tragic that this young child had to lose his life, but for us to be the pushers of change, I think that's great.
Thank you. Anything further from members of council? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you. We have no unfinished business listed on the agenda. That takes us into bylaws. First bylaw is the KPMG agreement for the organizational review. It's moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and KPMG for the completion of an organizational review. Is there any discussion? All in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next bylaw is with regard to the agreement with Enbridge Gas, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Tadman. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Enbridge Gas Incorporated for the installation of natural gas services for the Sharp Road Industrial Park. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to reports of advisory committees of council, reports, minutes, and council reports. The first is the Economic Development Advisory Committee, moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council received the May 5th, 2022 Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. The next is the Rural Advisory Committee meeting minutes, moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council received the April 27th Rural Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Under item 6, discussion, 6.3, Councillor Bateman, you requested that Kathy and Joe agree to attend a Lower Trent board meeting as a delegation or a delegate. Is there a specific reason as to why they needed to do that? Are there concerns there that maybe need to come to the municipality as well? Just asking.
It was recommended that we could invite Lower Trent there because there's a misconception with conservation authorities on, for lack of a better word, being the bad guy. So it was more just for them to come there and ask whatever questions they want on the role of the conservation authority. Some people are under the interpretation that the conservation authority are enforcing their set of rules, and really all they're enforcing is the rules that are set out by the province. And I think it's just so that we can bridge that gap of misunderstanding between rural residents and what the conservation authority actually does and what they're allowed to do.
The expectation is that Kathy and Joe bring a report back to your rural advisory committee. Is that how this is worded? Just asking.
I thought we were making reference to Lower Trent actually coming to our meeting. You're making a reference to Joe and.
It says Kathy and Joe have agreed to attend a Lower Trent board meeting as a delegate at the request of Councillor Bateman.
I think that's written wrong. I think we were going to invite Lower Trent, or we're going to, George and Kathy were going to go. Yeah, so I don't think they've attended yet, to my knowledge. I missed one because of another meeting, but they haven't gone. But all those meetings are open except for when they're a hearing.
Right.
But if they don't want to attend that, and next time we have a rural advisory committee, the recommendation or suggestion was Lower Trent can come to our meeting if they have the time, so that any question can be asked to them about their mandate, the scope of work that they do.
Right. Thank you.
Anything further from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
I think there's several misunderstandings, and Lower Trent's always willing to come and speak. But yeah, but the one thing that just in the last year or so that there people that had creeks running through their property thought that Lower Trent was stopping them from removing trees that have fallen down and things like that. And they thought that they were the bad guys because they wouldn't allow that. But that's totally untrue. They don't, they can't make a judgment. And they also do not have the resources to come and chop up that tree and take it out. So if the people with the bigger farms understood that, and in one case in particular, once they knew that you're free to go in because it's passing through your property and flooding part of your property, you can go and chainsaw that tree out of there. So I think more people that know that, then they respect what the government has mandated the conservation area to do.
I don't
And
I don't want to get into a big discussion about what the Lower Trent does. This is
no, this wasn't about that. I was just, as I read this, I thought there might have been concerns from the Rural Advisory Committee, and they were taking those to Lower Trent, wondering if those concerns should also have come to the,
Right.
just as I read number 6.3. That was all. But if not, I'm good.
Thank you. Me too. All those in favor? There being none opposed, the motion's carried. Next is Accessibility Advisory Committee, moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the May 13th, 2022 Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Next is Heritage Advisory. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the May 9th, 2022 Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to reports of minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. The only one before us is the Lower Trent Board. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Bateman. The council received the Lower Trent May 12th, 2022 meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, communications, and petitions. The first is correspondence from Mr. Jim Moore of Pinnacle Street North. It's moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council receive or support. Oh, it says it twice. So it's that council receive the correspondence from Jim Moore, Pinnacle Street North, concerning traffic and safety concerns. Is there any discussion? I actually wouldn't mind supporting this. This is about traffic on Pinnacle Street where lots of people are driving, using it as a bypass essentially to avoid Yonge Street and Dundas, especially people on their way to and from the high school. And I think as that development in there grows, I think we may want to take a look at that as we have with, as we are with areas of Ontario Street and down Baldwin Street as well. So, Councillor Tadman.
So we could include that with the rest of the study that's going forward then.
Well, I think it would be included anyway, but
Yeah.
I think it would be wise of us to support this and ask
So
staff
we'll
to take a look.
support it knowing that it's going to be looked at.
Right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Is that okay with you, Councillor Anderson? As the
That's what I
mover?
was hoping, but I just left it as received for that.
Is that okay with
purpose.
you, Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, I was just gonna add, that's the reason we had
Yeah,
discussed it
yeah.
and put received because we knew the traffic study was already underway, but I have no issue and I don't think Councillor Anderson does supporting it.
So I'm going to add and refer to staff to add or to include in the traffic study, in the municipal traffic study. Is that fair? Go ahead, Councillor Tadman.
Yeah, and Mayor, I think it's always a good idea to respond to someone that's taken a lot of trouble several times to try and get an answer. So hopefully the clerk's department will respond and say that that'll be considered. Thanks.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Brings us to FYI correspondence. The only item is the Northumberland County updates, June 6th to June 17th. It's moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the Northumberland County updates, June 6th to June 17th, 2022. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
Nothing on your update, Mayor. I was just gonna ask if you had any luck or had the opportunity to mention, and it's a minor thing, but it's irritating to me, that sign just as you're going out of town that is starting to rot down through the middle. That would be the county responsibility.
I have not
Okay.
had chance to do that because I keep forgetting to. And every time I drive by it, which is
You said
frequently, as
same,
you can
yeah.
imagine,
It
I
just
think
looks
I
bad.
have to do that. And then I get home and I get on other things. So watch me as I write it down. No. It's certainly seen better days, that's for sure.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Is it actually on the update?
Yes, it is.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering if the Rural Advisory Committee is sending a representative to any of the open houses regarding agricultural mapping.
Councillors LeBlanc or Bateman, can you?
That can be put on the agenda for this Tuesday night.
Uh-huh.
Already done, there you are.
You'll have to
We
add
will
it.
amend it.
You'll have to add it, yeah. Yeah. Anything further? Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
I was just gonna ask when that takes place because that meeting, I think we have one scheduled for Wednesday and that'll be our last one, I believe. So it wouldn't be either myself or Councillor LeBlanc. When's the last meeting for the Rural Advisory Committee? September? Okay, so we're still some time.
And there are three sessions of that county mapping. And the last one is July 14th. The first one is June 27th in Campbellford. So there's lots of time. Anything further from just one meeting at a time, eh? Anything further from members of council? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Brings us to question period. Does anyone from the gallery have a question for us that was on the agenda? Mrs. Richardson. And I'll just, we'll need a microphone and that gives me time to read the blurb. Question period is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions about items that appeared on this evening's agenda. Members are asked to state their name for the record before asking their question. A maximum of 5 minutes is set aside for question period. Language, content, and conduct must remain respectful at all times. Questions will be received and answered by the mayor or by a member of council or staff if designated by the mayor. Mrs. Richardson.
Good evening, for the record, Brenda Richardson. I have a few questions from the report in regards to Orchard Gate Pond, especially since Councillor Tadman brought up about Butler Creek. Janet Noyes reported that Butler Creek flood plan is over 30 years old and assessment is in need of updating. Considering all the building that's going on south of the tracks that drain into Butler Creek has been right up to Cedar Street, almost washed over. Has anybody, or is Mr. Gooding considered, getting in touch with him or trying to make plans to do such thing
With the lower trend,
with Janet Noyes? Yes.
Mr. Gooding?
So I believe there's a funding opportunity right now to do that research or that report. And it's something staff's looking into to see if it's warranted or not based on just discussions with the lower trend.
So you're leaving it up to staff to see if it's warranted, but Janet Noyes said it's over 30 years old since it's been assessed. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Not-
just-
we're
I don't
not-
understand.
whoa, we're not getting into a big debate with staff.
No, I asked him a question.
Yes, you did, and he answered it. You have another question?
Yes, I do. It's in regards to, which I found very disturbing when Mr. Gooding reported that there was no maintenance records for Orchard Gate Pond. Maintenance records are in every ECA for every pond. And they are mentioned in the stormwater pond, and Councillor Bateman had asked about fines. I'm wondering if you could ask Mr. Gooding if he has reviewed the stormwater management plan, because in there it does state that ponds owned by the municipality that are not maintained, okay, you can be fined up to $5,000 per pond. The ministry can send the crew in to fix it up. A perfect example of that is the Roos Pond, where Mr. Brian Keane reported in one of his reports that they had a hard time finding it due to all the foliage that had overgrown the pond. Now, these ECAs, as Councillor LeBlanc pointed out, are written for a reason. No pond should be assumed, as was Orchard Gate, we've had horrendous downpours. Have their pipes ever been flushed?
There's two questions. You would like to know if Mr. Gooding's read the
Yep.
stormwater master plan and have the pipes at Orchard Gate ever been flushed?
Correct.
Can you answer either of those questions, Mr. Gooding?
Yes, I've read the stormwater master plan. This isn't our ECA, so it's the developer's responsibility to maintain any records and follow up the MECP is required. With regards to flushing the pipes, I'm not aware of any flushing, but however, they're fairly new, so I wouldn't anticipate too much accumulation in them at this point.
Do you mind if I make a comment, Mayor?
If you can try to roll it into a question, I think that would be appropriate. for
Okay.
question period.
Do you recall reading in this report that it said that the town was to monitor the maintenance of Orchard Gate approximately every 2 weeks? So considering the history of the negligence of maintenance for our ponds, I'm assuming that that was not done, and that's why there was never any maintenance records. Is that correct?
Can you answer that question?
I would say most of these ponds are designed so they're more passive. Again, it's 15-year cycles for cleaning out sediment. A lot of organizations, and I haven't looked at the ECA recently, but it outlined the requirements. And more modern ones might say, testing up to a certain point. This one might say, inspections on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, whatever the case may be. It's just we haven't assumed this pond, so staff hasn't taken on that task to do so at this point.
The point is that maintenance is required for every pond, and it's not.
Again,
being-
we're not getting into a bit debate. with
Okay, I
staff.
have one more question. Has anyone had the opportunity to forward the email that I sent to you last April in regards, and I forwarded it to Mr. Walsh and all of council, this council and the past council, that David Fisher from the MOE had given the municipality to September 15th, 2017 to have a maintenance plan for all ponds. I can forward you a copy of the email if you like.
There's a maintenance schedule and plan in the 2019 Master Stormwater Plan that would provide an outline for general maintenance requirements for every pond.
Thank you.
So could you tell me that if someone was to come knocking at your door, like I think this Orchard Gate is opening up a Pandora's box, You've got the ministry going to be overlooking all this. They could turn around and knock on someone's door and say, well, while we're here, could we see the maintenance plans for Brighton by the Bay? Could we see the maintenance records for Harbor Point Pond, Roos Pond, Tackaberry Ridge?
they could
What are you
come-
going to do?
They could come down anytime and ask for those.
I think they should.
Very well.
Because this town, this council and past council have been told, not just by myself, but by other people and by the ministry, that these maintenance plans, that's why they are there. That is why you, Mayor, supported EOR for the Stormwater Master Plan and was against GD Jewel. You did not want them. You wanted EOR.
That's correct.
And now EOR has done this Stormwater Master Plan. And as Councillor Tadman said, and I agree 100%, you come and look at my back, go walk down my backyard, look at the garbage, the poop dog bags, the shoes, the tarps that people have pulling out of the catch basin. I have sent an email to Toby. Nothing is being done. No maintenance at all are being done on these ponds. And it's pathetic and it's sad. And I know that Mr. Gooding is new. And perhaps if he'd like, I could sit down and go, but you know what, it's going to be, like it's been said, you don't want this to come back on you or the taxpayer for Orchard Gate Pond, but it's going to come back on this council, next council, past councils, everybody, if you don't start doing the maintenance.
Sorry, you're suggesting that the maintenance schedule is not being maintained, and I'm not sure that that's the case. Mr. Gooding, can you speak to that, please?
So the maintenance schedule, is this pertaining to the Orchard Gate Pond or
This
other
is
ponds?
pertaining to the maintenance schedule through the Stormwater Master Plan.
Yeah, it's not my department. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to
Fair enough.
Whose
Fair enough.
department is it, sir?
It would
Yeah.
be operations, right?
operation.
Which is? Because I sent an email April 13 and asked who I could get in touch with, who was in charge with ponds. Nobody's responded.
Yeah.
So who's in charge of ponds?
I believe it would be
Yeah, I think
the
it would-
manager of operations
Environmental services.
or environmental services. So
A name, please?
Mr. Poole is the interim manager of environmental services.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question for question period?
Hi, Your Worship, councillors. My name is Cheryl Langevin. I live at 6 Cove Crescent. I just have a couple of questions on, I'm having a hard time seeing here. I can't make out my own handwriting too. On what came up tonight with regarding the Orchard Pond. Is council able to stop further building of the developer until a developer has issued actually, well, I guess it's the developer who has resolved the problem with the pond after the ECA is sent out,
So
going back to the original ECA?
the simple answer would be no, because that part of the subdivision is already built out.
No, but can you stop him from doing further until he corrects his the original problem with the first,
Don't know
Right.
the answer to that question.
you know, because it seems to me we don't have any responsibility to the town, or we should have something to stop someone from doing something if they haven't done what they did in the first time incorrectly. Does that make sense?
Your comment makes sense. Yes.
Okay. Another thing is, if there's any flooding issues prior to the enlargement, who'll be responsible for the damages from this area with this? Will it be the town now? You haven't taken over the pond yet, so technically it should be the developer, would it not be? Who would be? Who would we go to?
If there's flooding,
Yeah, if there's any flooding because of that pond issues,
I
and
guess
that
if-
hasn't been
I
resolved yet.
guess if the homeowner could prove that the flooding was based on the pond issue, they would have recourse to the owner of the pond.
So that would be the homeowner that have to go to the
Well, they-
owner of the pond.
Yeah.
Would they get any backup from council to support that? Because you're into this kind of conflict right now, so to speak, with the developer regarding the size of this.
Can't imagine that the
Fine.
municipality would want to engage in that kind of civil
I know, but
litigation.
you can see where I'm going. It could be quite a mess for all these homeowners. We went through this a few years ago with the other ones. One thing I did notice was Mr. Poole's name was on the original documentation way back in 2005 and 6 regarding the pond. Did anybody think of picking his mind, go back memory lane to see just exactly what his involvement was and what he signed his name to at that time. Was he responsible for the ECA at the beginning? He's on staff now, I believe, or he's a consultant. I think that would only be something that I would have done had I been in charge, but because
Can't
he does
speak to
have,
that.
he does have history with that, you
Yes.
know. so.
Yes.
And the last thing is regarding the administration. I suppose it's just my bone of contention. On the majority of the documents that were signed by the mayor and the clerk at that time, very difficult to make out the signatures. There was no typewritten signature block beneath the names, so you don't know who did it. In a couple of the documents, someone marked for, and the mayor was there. Who was this person? No signature block below. I did notice, though, that the developer printed his name underneath of his signature. So I just thought that that was something that I noticed, and I think other people might notice too, because how do you know unless you go back in time and marry that signature up, who exactly signed that documentation, and is it legal?
I'm certain that it's legal if it came through the clerk's office.
Did
The
it?
clerk is, certainly the clerks have been, through my experience on council, diligent individuals.
And I haven't noticed recently. There was only one. Mayor Wallace and Vicky Kimmett's name were typed in, but they hadn't signed it. So it was just used, the copy that they put through to show what they had done, something about assumption of roads when Mr. Kelly was here. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question for council with regard to tonight's agenda? Madam Clerk, are you aware of anyone joining us by Zoom? I don't see anyone up there. Thank you. We have no in-camera session this evening. That brings us to the confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw. It's first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the corporation of the municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on June 20th, 2022. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And finally, a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, and I'll need a seconder, that the June 2022 council meeting adjourn at 8:31 p.m. Is there a seconder? I have a seconder and a thirder and a fourther. Seconded by Councillor Tadman. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Drive safely home, everybody.